Tricia, you're muted.
Look at that. Classic. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're gonna get moving. I hear a little echo. What I'm just gonna ask if you're not presenting to turn off your camera, because that will just help us with bandwidth, which apparently is a thing we have to manage. So thank you all for coming. This is our third webinar in a 4-part webinar series. So far, we've had a lot of really great presentations. Just a few updates and housekeeping items. We are working to get the previous recordings as well as this recording up on the WSDA's YouTube page. We're just not quite there yet. We need to close caption everything. It takes a little bit of time. So all of the recordings will be made available, but they're not available yet. If you are not on our listserv, I strongly encourage you to join our listserv, because that's how you get automated updates and find out about these cool webinars, among other things. You can join the listserv on our website. So recordings will be made available. Updates are through the listserv. A couple other housekeeping items. Each presenter will be available for questions after their presentation. If you could please be sure to put your questions into the chat box. So there's a chat box, put your questions into the chat box, and then I'll work on getting those answered once the person is done presenting. It's possible that we just won't have the answers, and then we'll at least look to get those answers to you afterwards. We are recording this presentation to make it available at a later date. Gregory Foster from the Cannabis Observer is here, and they are also recording this presentation, and I believe have been making those recordings available on their website as well. So again, questions through the chat box here, and I will moderate those when folks are done with their presentation. As you all know, the hemp program is really new and new to us, new to the world. And so we're still kind of learning and figuring out how hemp interacts with all of the different programs here that are well established at the WSDA. So it's really great to get the expertise from different teams throughout the program. So our first presentation is from our seed program manager, and that is Paula Moore. And Paula is going to talk to us about what certified seed is. So with that, I am going to exit and turn it over to Paula. Paula, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I think I have successfully unmuted myself. And I have a few slides to go through. I also have a timer to keep myself honest so that we can stick to the time that's been allotted and have some time for questions as well. One of the things that I will do is on the slides, you guys can read. I'll just give a summary for each slide, and then hopefully that will leave as much time as possible at the end of the presentation for questions. So let me see here if I can't share my screen for this PowerPoint. Okay, so y'all should see the opening slide. As indicated, my name is Paula Moore, and I am the manager for the seed program with WSDA. I should also start out this slide presentation with an acknowledgement that we are literally in front of a train track, and hopefully the train will not interrupt my presentation today. If it does, I will pause he does 2 blows before the intersection and then 1 blow of his horn on the other side of the intersection, and then I'll resume the presentation. So we're going to advance to slide 2. These are the agenda items that we're going to go over today. In short, in offering a short course on seed certification. Seed certification can be rather confusing to individuals, because what is the difference between certified seed and common seed? So we're going to go over which agencies in Washington are seed certification agents. What does certification mean? How do you certify? And I'll put this in context to hemp, how a person could produce certified hemp seed. We'll go over labeling laws, some Title V, some patent things, and seed regulatory authorities. And then at the end, I'll have some references. And I will make these slides available for distribution, because I think the references at the end would be helpful for folks who want to do their own research on these topics. And this is me actually standing in one of the first hemp fields in Washington State under the pilot program, back in 2017-18 time period. So first off, I want to go what's required to sell seed in Washington. Anybody who is selling seed in Washington needs a seed labeling permit. That is a permit that is issued from our program. We are located in Yakima, Washington, in the WSDA building right downtown on First. The cost for that is $20 and it's based off of the gross sales. So $20 for the first 10,000 gross sales, and then after that there's an assessment of 11 cents per $100 of gross annual sales. I've listed the Washington chapters where you can find additional information on that. In general, this is a permit that is necessary for any seed that is packaged for 8 ounces or greater. Anything that's less than 8 ounces is exempt from having a seed labeling permit. However, each seed packet sold in Washington does require to have the minimum seed labeling items and components. We'll go through that later in the slides. Additionally, any seed that is for sale in Washington needs to have a germination percent, so we know what the viability is, and then also be analyzed for noxious weed seed. Every state in the United States has a noxious weed seed list, which can be different than the noxious weed seed plant list. So I wanted to make sure I made that distinction. It can be kind of confusing for individuals just coming into the seed industry. The costs for a viability and a noxious weed exam is listed on the WACs in the 16303-200 chapter. Additionally, the third thing that's necessary for selling seed is a seed dealer's license, and that is issued through the Department of Revenue. That costs $125. And then there is also an opportunity to add other endorsements, such as for if your facility has a scale and you need to have weights and measures come through and verify your scales. And there may also be necessary for the ag merchants permit. So those are things that would be worked out through the Department of Revenue, through their webpage when you're making your business license application. And then fourthly, this is important for certified seeds, so that if an individual is wanting to produce certified seed in Washington, the location where the seed is cleaned, and we call that process conditioned, needs to have an inspection by seed program. And what we're looking for in that inspection is that the operator understands cleaning practices, can understand that when they're cleaning a seed lot, there needs to be hygiene practices where the the entire equipment is cleaned down in between field runs, in between seed lots, that there's a mechanism for labeling the seed lots, storage, bagging, and those kind of things. Because one of the key components for producing certified seed is that each lot is maintained pure. And part of that starts in that initial conditioning and bagging process before it's offered for retail sale. That permit process through the seed program is no cost to industry. That is a service that we provide through the assessments that are collected through producing certified seed. So we'll move to the next slide. So seed certification agencies has an acronym of SCA. There are, each state does their own organization. Washington has it split and the tasks divided between two organizations. I'll describe crop improvement and then I'll describe what we do here at WSDA. Crop improvement is managed by Lauren Port. They're located in Pullman, Washington, and they do the similar functions that we do. They'll do a field inspection. They do the final tagging of any crop that meets the specific standards. They are also the foundation seed production for Washington. So any foundation seed that is produced, crop improvement, we do an acronym of WSDA. WSDA has some sort of management in that process, and they are also producing the foundation seeds for WSU, OSU, and then also contracted for private breeding. On the flip side, what WSDA does here, the seed program, as mentioned earlier, I'm the manager, Paula Moore. We have a mechanical seed testing lab here on site in Yakima. We also do the field inspection process. We also have the tagging process. But then in addition to those roles, we have the seed labeling and regulatory authority. We have an MOU with USDA for helping and assisting on any Federal Seed Act regulations, regulatory items that may come up within our state. So with that distinction, here's a list of crops that are eligible for production of certified seed. You can see on the right-hand side, crop improvement. They're primarily the cereals, those cereal grains, some buckwheats, and then they also do the tree seed program over on the west side of Washington. Here with WSDA, essentially we do all other crops. That's just the short way to put it. In addition, I've highlighted hemp because I'm going to focus the rest of this presentation towards producing certified hemp seed. But you can see we do everything else as far as corn, beans, large seeded legumes, grasses. We do many varieties of reclamation forbs or woody plants, sunflowers, and vegetable seeds. So exactly what does seed program do? As I said, we've got that mechanical seed laboratory here. We have 27 staff year round. We hire 9 to 12 seasonal staff through the summer for field inspections, and also some miscellaneous tasks here in the lab, like washing dishes and filing lab cards and whatnot. So in the lab, pretty much our big tasks is the purities, noxious seed evaluations, crop and weeds, and getting those germinations and viabilities established so that when a lab report is issued from our lab, stakeholders can then utilize that putting that on their label for selling their seed. And then they can be compliant with the laws and rules for selling seed in Washington. We also do phytosanitary examinations, and that's a visual inspection, which is required for any seed that would be going as an export out of country. We can also issue those phytosanitary certificates based off of applications that come in through a USDA website, and we are like a third-party verifier that all documentation is met for exporting that seed from Washington into the receiving country. Our field activities, like I said, we do the field inspections for certified seed. We also do those phytosanitary field inspections. And then, as mentioned earlier, we do the 2 permits, the seed labeling permit and the seed conditioner, certified seed conditioner permit. So here's where the meat of my presentation, I hope to communicate on what is seed certification. What does it mean if somebody wants to purchase certified seed? Certified seed is a label for a type of seed that's been through a third-party verification. Washington State Crop Improvement and WSDA for the state of Washington are the verifiers that a crop meets a field standard on purity. We're looking for off types. We're looking for anything that would disqualify it. If it's a hybrid, as far as if it's shedding pollen, not shedding pollen, there's a checklist per crop that seed certification agencies have by crop to look for specific components to verify that this variety is pure and it is stable through the generations. And the whole point of this is to market high quality seed that we can know will propagate and replicate year after year, generation after generation in the same manner, so that it has this similar height, leaf color, leaf width, production, yield, things like that plant breeders have bred specifically for that variety, named it, and gone through that process to have it as an actual named cultivar or variety. You can find these standards on our WAC is the 16302, and it is broken out by crop, and you'll see all of the standards that are necessary. We also provide a mechanism for PVP and Title V varieties, which I'll get into later in the slide presentation. So how is seed certification accomplished? Okay, so there's 2 organizations that set the standards. There's AOSCA and there's OECD. The short end of that is OECD sets the standards for global seed certification standards. Their standards are a little bit different than AOSCA. Given that we're in the United States, we utilize the AOSCA standards, and our standards mirror what AOSCA minimum standards are. Seed is sold or produced and sold on a class naming scheme. Let's call it a naming scheme, where it is starts out with a breeder seed and then goes to foundation, registered, certified. So that breeder seed then produces foundation, foundation class produces registered, registered class produces certified. And I have here at the bottom of the slide the logos for both AOSCA and OECD. So if in your web searches or later searches you see those logos, you can recognize who they are and what they represent. So in general, seed is sold two ways. There's common seed or there's certified seed. Certified seed, if you're seeing something that says it's actually certified, it would have a blue label on it, and that is the most commonly produced class that is out in the retail market. Registered class has a purple tag, which is not as commonly available in the market. It's really like that second generation after that parent material. Foundation class is marketed with a white label, and that class has the highest standards when we're looking at field, in the field standards or in the laboratory. In this foundation class, there can be no off types found. There can be nothing. It all has to be uniform. So that foundation class is really the highest level of certified seed available. And then the standards change as you go through each one of the classes. So actually this picture here, we have one of our field inspectors in one of the certified hemp fields that was through the pilot program several years ago. And so I wanted to give this group, how could a person produce certified hemp seed if they wanted to? First off, you'd have to purchase a certified seed lot or a clonal lot, and you would know that you purchased that type of certified seed based off of the tag that accompanied the product. I'll have some slides here which have examples of what a certified tag looks like coming next. Second, that grower would need to research what the land history is for the class that they want to produce. And then thirdly, they need to make an application with the seed certifying agency. In this case, for hemp, it would be with WSDA seed program, and provide us with all the required documents for that application process. Then that crop would be inspected by our field staff at specific intervals throughout the growing season. Additionally, 10 days prior to harvest, plant samples would be taken and the THC would be measured for the specific threshold. I think this group is probably highly aware that, you know, if you go over that threshold, then the field fails, and that's the same for seed certification. That would be a notice that we can't accept it for any further evaluation. We can go back and retest it, but it does have to meet those standards for the THC threshold. Then a grower would harvest the seed and send the seed sample in for a germination and a viability. I did miss on the slide a purity. They would also need to provide at that time the THC analysis for that seed lot. Assuming everything passes for the purity, the germination, the viability, the THC, they could then apply through our program for certified tags on each eligible seed lot. I will mention right here that growers or producers can, they have the opportunity for any plot. They can divide that harvested seed into many seed lots. It should be noted that a seed lot does need to be unique and be a unique identifier for each seed lot. So you could have one plot of land, you could say have 4 seed lots, but each one of those seed lots would need to be in a unique identifier for that seed lot. So here's some examples of certified seed tags that Washington issues. I did the fronts and the back. So starting up here on that blue class is certified seed. Here in the middle would be the information on the crop, the variety, and on the back side, this indicates what class and what legal rights there are as far as producing this class of seed. There's the purple registered tag and the white foundation tag. And then I put over here on the right hand side just some examples of other certified tags that we issue for grass. There's a sod quality tag where grass has to meet a higher standard of purity and viability to qualify for this tag. There's select tags and source identified tags, mostly used for those reclamation grasses and forbs that are produced under the certification umbrella. So I wanted to go over this slide. The short end of this is that any seed that is sold must be labeled. If you're going to be selling seed in Washington at a retail level, it needs to be labeled. And basically the short end of that story is because the buyer has the right to know what they're purchasing. They need to know what the crop is. They need to know what the minimum expectation is of that seed once they put it into the ground. Will it germinate? How pure is the seed? What inert material is in that packet of seed or bag of seed that they've purchased? I should note that for grain production, there are some exemptions as far as not having to have a tag on each lot, because grain is sold in bulk, and other commodities that are sold in bulk, the actual label can be on the invoice when you're purchasing that seed from your seed dealer. So for this venue, I'd like to make sure and stress that when you are purchasing seed, hemp, actually any seed in Washington, it should have a label. It should have those minimum purity, germ, and say what the inert material is on it at the point of purchase. And then here's an example of what does that retail label look like for an agricultural crop. These are the things that are minimally required on any tag that is, any seed that is tagged for sale in Washington. This label happens to be an example of a foundation seed lot that is available for retail sale. You'll see here that you need to have the weight of the seed, weight of other crops, the weight of the inert material, the total germination, the month and the year that it was tested. There is a requirement for the mediation statement, and then the name and address of the labeler. These are the minimum requirements that if you're producing seed in Washington and want to sell it retail, this is what you would need to have minimally on your tags. Then we can kind of come into some kind of complicated areas as far as seed production goes. There are intellectual property protection rights. That goes through a PVP program that's established with the USDA that started back in the 1970s. And there's a website that anybody can, a public website that anybody can utilize. It's in the back on my references, that you can search by a variety and find out whether or not it is under a plant protection. And that is a 20-year term for the name and the genetics for that plant material. Now, not all PVP material is a Title V. Some is what's called a Title V. The short end of a Title V plant material is that it can only be sold and marketed under a certified class scheme. So a Title V will only be sold as either foundation, registered, or certified. Some Title V actually specify how many generations, and that you cannot replicate that on your own. That you have to get permission from the breeder who owns those intellectual property rights. Then we can get into some more complicated scenarios where there's a utility patent. A utility patent is a patent that protects the actual gene for the variety, and those can be found under the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And in the short end, the best example I have is on how it's being used currently is with Clearfield wheat varieties. Clearfield wheat varieties can only be grown under a contract. To protect their patent. Other examples is soft durum wheat traits and the high amylose wheat. Those varieties are under utility patents because they are specifically genetically bred and they are trademarked through the U.S. Patent Office. I'm not aware of very many hemp varieties that have gone this track, but I wanted to mention it here because it kind of paints the whole picture for seed certification. It is a part of seed certification and something that here on our end, when we're accepting applications, we do review, is it a PVP variety? Is it a Title V variety? Is it a patented variety? We do that assessment during the application process. So you may be asking, so when I purchase hemp seed, how do I know what I'm buying is real? Bottom line, you need to read your labels, know what your labels mean, ask your seed dealer if they have not provided that label, that they do need to provide the label. Ask if the variety is protected under any PVP or Title V or patent. And that way you know up front what you can and can't do with that seed legally as far as for replication. So then we come to seed regulatory. Both WSDA and the USDA AMS programs have regulatory authority for Seed Act violation. USDA short end, the USDA oversees federal Seed Act violations over the whole United States. They publish the state noxious weed seed list. They are also asked from seeds that are participants and an SCA. They ask us to provide seed samples for a trueness to variety grow out that they do annually. They follow up on the Title V complaints. And then our end as WSDA, we're doing the same things just on the intrastate commerce, on the commerce that's occurring within Washington. We review labels, labeling language. We follow up on seed complaints. We can go to a point of issuing fines. The maximum fine is $2,500 per occurrence. We also are doing the laboratory analysis for any seeds that come into question or have consumers have made complaints. And here are the references that we'll be making available. There's our seed program WSDA website. This handbook in here, this link actually goes to the section for selling and producing seed in Washington. It's a really great, it's a couple pages long, great reference site for, you know, if you're a farmer and you have seed and you want to sell seed, what do you need? It has some check boxes to help you navigate which licenses and permits you need. I have the link here for the seed dealers if you want to follow up on what AOSCA does. And then I did go ahead in here and I made the link for hemp varieties that are approved for seed certification. AOSCA has a variety review board and they review all applications, and then varieties that they have deemed are pure and stable and can meet the standards and for replication, that the variety won't change over time, they've listed these on a public list. And then there's some frequently asked questions on what a variety review board does and the application dates, in case maybe you're interested in taking one of your own varieties and getting it approved through that variety review process. There's the links for OECD. Again, kind of the global aspect of what AOSCA does. And then I listed the PVP website in case you wanted to, you know, do some searches on some variety names and find out if the seed you have in hand happens to have a Title V or a PVP protection. And then I've listed here our contacts. We have several emails that are group managed for specific questions. We're located here in Yakima on First Avenue. And that concludes what my presentation is for today.
Thank you so much. I know that we do have some questions, so I'm going to read through those to see what we've got. So our first question is, and I'm just like, wow, I just learned a lot there.
Yeah, and I realized that, so literally this is like short course. This is like speed seed certification.
Speed seed. No, that was great. I'm just like, whoa, I'm about to ask a question, but my mind is still racing. Okay, I'll calm down. So our first question from Bonnie Joe is, do donated seeds for research need to be labeled and inspected?
Donated for seed certification, or I guess I need to maybe have a clarification.
Donated seeds for research. So I think Bonnie Joe's probably, and maybe she can clarify a little bit in the chat, but referring to like researchers at WSU who may have seed donated to them.
I'm trying to see if there might be any other, if she clarified on that. So if the seed is donated to them, they wouldn't necessarily, I mean, and it's outside of a seed certification program, and they're just, you know, say doing research on say a particular question or whatnot, it wouldn't need to be notified or registered with us at seed program. I would recommend to make sure that the seed, if it's a true variety, that the variety is not a PVP or a Title V. That way it's, you know, say it's a public variety, if it actually is a true variety, because as we all acknowledge, you know, hemp seed and hemp production is brand new, and it's kind of a little bit like the Wild West as far as naming. There's many things that are named, you know, the same thing or similar enough that it's and it's not true certified seed. Those types of things, you know, could be a little bit of early legwork before donating the seed to WSU, because it sounds like that what they were looking for maybe on a research end is that common seed, not certified seed.
Okay. Well, we'll accept that as the answer. And Bonnie Joe, if you need more details, you can email me and Paula after. And so then our next question from Andrew is, seed can't be certified unless it comes from certified seed? I think that's a clarification.
Yes, correct. That's a perfect question. So it starts out with that breeder seed level, and breeder seed comes from the breeder. They would put an application in to AOSCA through the Variety Review Board for hemp. That Variety Review Board goes through all of their, you know, their research data to verify that that variety is pure, is stable over multiple years of replication, and then it is accepted into the variety name, is accepted into the program, and the owner is listed. And then all seed certification agencies have access to that list. And so when an application comes in, say, and I don't know, I'm just making up, say it says Blue Moon, the variety name is Blue Moon, and we get an application, we see on the AOSCA Variety Review Board that Blue Moon is accepted, then we can enter it in for certification. If you planted breeder seed, then you could produce foundation seed. If you planted foundation seed, you could produce registered. If you planted registered seed, you can produce certified. So it really is, it's a tier mechanism. You can think about it as generation. The breeder seed is, say, that mother source, and then that next generation, you know, is the children, and then the children are the grandchildren, and then the great-grandchildren. So it kind of puts the generations out, and they just name the generations by a class. Maybe I hope that helped clarify what each class kind of means through the generations.
Okay. I'll go to our next question from Cindy. Can viable hemp seed be sold retail to the public?
Yes, there's no, as long as it needs to be labeled appropriately for the purity and the viability and those minimum requirements on a label. Hemp seed can be sold retail. It's legal in Washington.
Yeah, and I'll just add from my end, so it is a little bit disjointed because the hemp seed can be sold retail, but if someone has roots in the ground and is growing a plant, then they do need to be licensed. But the seeds themselves, free range. So do I need any permits to grow hemp seeds for use on my own farm?
How about I answer from my perspective, and then you can chime in on the hemp program. From our perspective under seed certification, if you were the only application or permits or anything that you would need would be as if you're literally doing certified seed production. Otherwise, through our program, you wouldn't need anything. However, we acknowledge there's a whole nother hemp program that has other standards.
Yeah, so, you know, once you have roots in the ground, you do need to be licensed. If you're not harvesting and selling your crop, we don't need to inspect that crop if it's not going to exit your property. But if you are harvesting plant material, then we do need to inspect it. And if you have roots in the ground and plants growing, you need to be licensed. So we have another question. Is AOSCA certifying feminized seeds?
So AOSCA has updated their standards for feminized seeds, and currently, actually we started this rulemaking last year when the update was made. Due to COVID-19, all rulemaking had paused for an extended period of time. We have picked that back up, and we will be offering that as a certified seed option, is to, you know, plant feminized seed and produce feminized hemp seed in Washington. However, that rule is not currently available or effective right now. Future state, we will be going down that direction.
Okay. Is there any inclusion of feminized seeds into the hemp seed program? Is there any testing available to see rate of feminization?
We have internally here with seed program, we do not have those tests available. That would be something that would need to be outsourced.
I see. As a researcher at WSU, I'm just wanting to know where to get some seed.
That's a great question. The seed sources are kind of a little, I don't really know where to give a great direction on that. Seed sources are offered online all over the place, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's true hemp seed. If you want to, you could send me an individual email, and I could get you in contact with some other states that have certified seed production that is active. Washington, we've had only one certified seed application in the last few years. So there's no active certified seed growers in Washington at the current time. But I could get you in contact with some other seed certification agencies that are.
All right. Does out-of-state certified seed, such as from Colorado, transfer to Washington?
Yes, you can obtain certified seed from any other state. You would need to make sure that you're following, like, I don't know what to call it other than, the importing from another state into Washington. If you're going to be utilizing that seed grown from out of state, certified seed out of state into Washington, do make sure you have the tags for that product, so that if you're wanting to replicate that in Washington as certified seed, that then you have all the documentation up front for that application. But yes, you can. I know Colorado is active for producing certified seed, and so is Oregon. Those are our kind of local Pacific Northwest states that are.
Lots of questions. Okay. Does the same agency that handles other seeds also deal with hemp? Or is hemp exclusive to one agency? I'm not entirely sure I understand that, but maybe you do, Paula.
Sure. So hemp, production of certified hemp seed would be strictly with WSDA seed program. Washington Crop Improvement does the cereal grains, the trees, and some other miscellaneous crops like buckwheat and whatnot. So certified hemp seed is in the wheelhouse for only seed program.
Do you handle flax seeds?
We do. There is certified production of flaxseed in Washington, and that is through seed program with us.
Okay. That was incredibly informative. I'm seeing a question about phytosanitary certificates, and maybe we should hold off on that for our next presenter, although I'll let you respond to that, Paula, from your perspective. And then I am going to just hold us from more questions because we still have 2 more presenters. But Paula, what is your take on that?
Sure. So hemp can be exported outside of Washington to other states and to, globally. That phytosanitary certificate process, the way we're managing it here at Seed Program is there's an application through a USDA portal called PSIT, supporting documentation is inputted. We're that third-party reviewer. We either issue the certificate or don't issue the certificate. If a certificate is issued, then that shipper would take that certificate with the product and then ship it to whichever destination it needs to go to. We've had just here lately a couple hiccups with seed arriving in Hong Kong, but it seems like, you know, between multiple people's input, ended up getting them what they needed. So it is a new process, because globally shipping, either exporting or importing of hemp is a new process for a lot of government agencies. So it is, yes, possible. I would maybe put a side footnote as have a lot of patience, because it may take longer than anticipated, and there may be you know, some stumbling blocks along the way.
Okay, with that, I am just going to thank you so much, Paula. I'm gonna need some time to, this is definitely one that I'm probably gonna watch twice. So I'm sure many of you are looking forward to when the recordings are up. Again, we'll put it, I will send an email to the listserv when the recordings are available. But that was an incredible amount of information. It was super helpful, Paula. So thank you so much for your knowledge and your expertise. Super appreciative. So thank you.
I'll send you this PowerPoint presentation as a flat PDF, and unfortunately I will have to exit as I've got some other things scheduled through the day. So I appreciate you offering this, since hemp is so new for everybody, and I hope the rest of the afternoon goes well.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye, Paula.
Bye.
Okay, so hopefully y'all are hanging in with us. That was a great presentation, and now we're going to pass the baton over to Benita Matheson. Benita is our nursery inspection program supervisor, and she's going to go over some general nursery licensing and regulations to produce hemp plants for sale. So thank you. Benita is a lively presenter, so y'all are in for a treat. And thank you so much for being here, Benita.
Thank you, Tricia. And yeah, hopefully I don't use my hands too much. So I'm going to put my slideshow up. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so again, I'm Benita Matheson, and I'm with the Plant Services program, and I'm the supervisor for the Northwest and Eastern parts of Washington. And today we're kind of just going to give you an overview of the general nursery licensing requirements that could affect you if you're selling hemp plants, you know, here in Washington State. And so some of the things that we're going to go over today are basically, what is the Plant Services program? You know, we're a small program, but we do a lot. And then kind of go over nursery endorsement, who needs a nursery endorsement, and then if you end up getting a nursery endorsement, what can you do with that? You know, and shipping plants within the U.S. And so that's what we're going to go over. Okay, so Plant Services, what do? We provide regulatory inspections for over 5,000 licensed retail and wholesale nurseries. And that's just to ensure that you guys as the consumers and the nursery industry are provided healthy, pest-free, and disease-free plant materials. And so what that entails is that we go out and we do facility inspections on the retail and wholesale nurseries, which might include inspections like a brown garden snail to kind of fulfill shipping requirements for other states. We also do growing season inspections for field-grown nursery stock, you know, there's a picture of the tulips over in Mount Vernon, and we do inspections on those because the bulbs get sold. We also do Christmas tree inspections for Christmas trees going out of the state for people that are selling those. And on top of nursery inspections and doing those facility inspections, WSDA Plant Services also, we also oversee the certified planting stock programs. And so this is basically kind of like what Paula was talking about with the seed certifications that they do. We do these voluntary programs for 8 crops right now, and it's just basically making sure that there is clean, virus-tested planting stock available to our specialty crop growers here in Washington State, and that begins with Generation 1 propagation material, and that comes from our National Clean Plant Network centers, and that's basically just making sure that these nurseries are producing virus-tested clean planting stock for the orchardists, the vineyards, and the growers here, and just to make sure that our crops are tested clean and they stay clean. And as I said, we have 8 programs. We currently use 4, and those 4 are the seed potato certification, our fruit tree industry, our caneberries, and our grape planting stock. And this might be something in the future for hemp, for the hemp industry, if that's kind of where you guys want to go. But this is something that is voluntary for any nursery to get into. Okay, so the plant services also oversees these plant quarantines. We have quite a few quarantines on plant material that's coming into our state. And some of the quarantines that might affect hemp would be the European corn borer quarantine and also the Japanese beetle quarantine. This is when you are bringing in any hemp plants. You have to have some type of inspection certificate or tag or label, and it has to show that it's free of injurious pests listed on this quarantine list, and also diseases and noxious weeds. And so all of your shipments, if you're bringing in live plant material, should have the botanical name and the common name. And we'll kind of get into these quarantines a little bit later and where you can find all of the information, specific information for this. It's just something that you're going to want to make sure that you're following when you're bringing in plant material. And these quarantines aren't really based on seed. It's more of you bringing in those plants, and if they have any soil in them. And at any time, if you guys want to find out more information, down at the bottom of each of my slides, there's it says Plant Health, Washington State Department of Agriculture. You can Google that and you will find our plant services website. And so part of that quarantine, and this is just a little more detailed, is the noxious weed and seed plant quarantine. This is a little different than what Paula had mentioned. This is more about the plants. Some are seeds, but we have over 100 different species listed here. And this is just something for you guys to be aware of. It is prohibited to buy, sell, or transport or distribute any of these seeds or plants listed here except by permit. And so if anybody wants one of these little nifty brochures, our inspectors have them available, and it's also available on our website to be printed. And so we do offer export certification services. I'm not going to get into this too much because the supervisor on the west side, Scott Brooks, will be speaking about this on your next webinar. But we do hemp exports. We've done a few, and that will be through the USDA PCIT website and also through our Pisces website, which is the WSDA Plant Services website. But Scott will get more into that, so I'm not going to get too far into the foreign shipments. I'll get a little bit more into domestic shipments. Okay, so who needs a nursery endorsement and what is a nursery endorsement? A nursery endorsement is basically an addendum to your master licensing that you get from the Department of Revenue. And it's just basically the license that lets you sell plants specifically. And so the RCW 1513-280 requires that any person selling plant material have a nursery license for each place of business where these plants are sold. And again, this little brochure is available on our website, and it kind of goes through, you know, plant permits, licensing information, what kind of businesses need a nursery license, what the cost is. And so you can get that on our website. Again, anybody who's handling or selling horticultural plants is considered a nursery dealer. So you'll have to have that addendum for each site. And that does include wholesalers, retailers, growers, shippers, and landscapers who are installing plants. Just to note that hemp is considered just a regular crop to us. And so you guys are subject to our quarantines and then also to getting a nursery license. Some of the exemptions from the nursery endorsement are the I-502 growers, and that is because marijuana is still listed as the Scheduled 1 controlled substance under the federal law. So because your guys' THC levels are below that standard, you would not be exempt from this endorsement. So if you are selling clones or plantlets to other wholesalers or other producers, you would need to get a nursery endorsement. Let's see. Exemptions. So other exemptions are garden clubs, nonprofit associations. So, you know, like plant sales at schools, they are exempt, but they are still required to have a plant sale permit. Anybody who's selling cut plant material is exempt from this nursery endorsement. If you are selling cuttings for propagation, you will still need to get a nursery endorsement. And again, if you are selling hemp plants wholesale, you will need to get a nursery license. So the cost of a nursery license is kind of based on your annual gross sales. So as you can see there, there's 3 tiers for a retailer and 2 tiers for a wholesaler. You will need to get one for each of your growing sites. And just kind of a point to make is that just like the hemp program, having this nursery license allows us to access your property to do pest and disease inspections without notice. We usually don't do that. We usually try to make appointments to kind of, you know, accommodate you and accommodate the inspector. So, but there is that chance that we just kind of show up and go through if we're in the area. And then one thing, if there is a bill in Olympia right now, House Bill 1019, that if home grow becomes legal, Though if anybody starts to sell plants from their home, that would be subject to our nursery license requirements. That bill is, I kind of looked through it and I didn't see anything about selling plants, but if that's the case, it would be subject to our nursery licensing requirements. Okay, so that's what we do, and we do all of those inspections with 10 plant inspectors. And so for the state of Washington, we have one program manager, Cindy Cooper, who will be talking after I do, and then 2 supervisors, myself and Scott Brooks. And we just got funded for a online enforcement officer who will be dealing with sales on the internet, like at websites, Etsy, Amazon, Facebook Marketplace. And so, and we have 2 office support staff. And here you can see, we really do a lot of different inspections. And, we do late blight inspections on potato fields. We do weed-free hay inspections. We've gone to the flower shows to do export certification on plants going into Canada. And we also help with trapping when necessary. And then also we do emergency trace back and trace forwards for USDA whenever they find either a virus or a pest of some sort that needs to have follow-up. And so again, we have 10 inspectors for the entire state. This is kind of an assignment by county map that will show you who is in charge of what counties. And you can find this map on our website, Plant Health, Washington State Department of Agriculture. And so if you find that you need a nursery inspection or you're going to be shipping your plant material out of the state, just be aware that, there's only 10 of us, and we already do, we do a lot of seasonal inspections that are already set. And so to get an inspection, you want to give the inspectors as much time as you can. Their schedules are already full, and so it's kind of if you call them today, it might be a week before they actually come to your facility. So if you are in fact shipping plants, hemp plants, and you get a nursery license and you need an inspection, some of the things that we will be asking for before we come out to see you is proof that you are a registered hemp producer. We will ask you what type of product you are sending, where you're shipping it to, and then when the anticipated shipping date is. And so just kind of be aware that every type of product that you send out and every destination is going to be different. We do not do CBD oils. We only do plant material, and it can't be too processed. We really just, we do live plants. We do things like hay inspection, hay, hops, stuff like that, but we don't do inspections on super processed products. And if you are shipping out of state, let's say you're sending dried hemp to Alabama, this is a really good website to do a little bit of research on your own. It's called the National Plant Board. And this website has all 50 states and the USDA, and this is really a reference tool for you to just kind of see what the requirements are to ship into these 50 states. And every state has a quarantine summary in here. And I'm just going to show you Washington's, this is the beginning of Washington's summary in the National Plant Board website. And it has, I think we have 46 pages in here. And this is where you can find all of those quarantines that I had listed in the prior slide. This will give you all the information on what's acceptable to send into Washington State specifically, and you know, do you need an inspection? I will tell you that for hemp plants coming into Washington State, they all must be accompanied by an inspection certificate from the state or country of origin. It has to be free of injurious pests, diseases, and noxious weeds. And they have to be labeled cannabis sativa and also have that common name hemp. So I have the website at the bottom if anybody wants to save that. And as I said, this is a really good reference for you if you're just figuring things out and trying to find what do you need to send your hemp product to Colorado or to Oregon. And so this is a really good start for you to do a little bit of research. And then if you have any questions, there's a lot of good contact information there for the other states as well as Washington. And really, that's all I have. If you have any questions, there's my email, my cell phone, and there are the links that I talked about.
Thank you so much. That was extremely helpful. We do have a question. I'm echoing, so my pauses are based on hearing myself echo. So I'll go into the first question. What does quarantine and inspection look like for hemp plants coming in from other states? Hops, latent virus, and powdery mildew are a concern coming in from California and other states.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, do you want to answer that?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. Thanks for asking that, Bonnie. So as we've been saying already, hemp being a fairly new crop for interstate commerce, there are not a lot of quarantines specifically directed at hemp, but certainly any hemp plants or any hemp that could harbor harmful pests would have to be inspected in the state of origin before it comes into Washington and have a phytosanitary certificate or other inspection certificate showing that it is free of harmful pests. So it's going to be subject to the same rules that other plants moving interstate are. You bring up a really good point about viruses and mildew, so I'm going to address that a little bit in my talk as well. But yes, it is subject to the freedom from harmful pests in crossing in a state line. That quarantine system is national.
Great. Do we have any other questions for Benita while she is here? I guess you told them everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, well, if you think of any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And now we are going to turn it over to Cindy Cooper. And Cindy is the Plant Services Program Manager, and she will be talking to you about hemp pests of quarantine concern. So really good segue there from the group. All right.
Yes, excellent segue. Thank you very much. Can you all see the slides on my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So I know everybody's probably getting antsy. We've been sitting here for a long time. Feel free to get up and stretch for a minute and we will acknowledge at this point that regulations are tedious. So thanks for hanging in there with us to get more information about your new industry and how it fits in with agricultural regulations. So as Benita said, the Plant Services Program is a small program within the Plant Protection Division of WSDA. I've been there for over 20 years, so hopefully I can answer most of the questions that come my way. We'll give it a shot. So in working through what you need to remember for compliance with nursery licensing and that kind of thing, there's two main things to remember. If you sell hemp plants to another WSDA licensed producer, you need to have a wholesale nursery endorsement on your Washington Master Business License. And I've only just become aware that some of you may not need to have a Master Business License. So we will have to work out how that can be done for folks that don't need that Master Business License. Also remember that WSDA Plant Services regulates plant pests on hemp plants as we do on any other type of plant material for sale in Washington. So if you are selling plants within the state, there's going to be inspections and freedom from harmful pests to meet. If you're going to move hemp plants or cuttings interstate, then there will be other requirements based on the destination. So here's that Department of Revenue website where you can go and get that wholesaler nursery endorsement on your Master Business License, dor.wa.gov. They've got really good information there. And if you have any trouble finding that, you can also contact us at the Department of Ag, and we'll help you through that process. I should point out that there is an exemption, as Benita mentioned, for I-502 marijuana growers. They're specifically exempt from nursery licensing at this time. So we will see if perhaps that changes in future. It'll be an industry-driven initiative if it does change. So at WSDA Plant Services, we may inspect any hemp plants that are for sale in the state of Washington. All plants for sale have to be free of harmful pests and diseases, and hemp plants that are to be sold or moved interstate must meet destination pest or quarantine requirements. And as pointed out, there's a National Plant Board website where you can look up requirements for all 50 states. At this time, they're going to be different in every state depending on the crops they are protecting in their own state. But a phytosanitary inspection for pests and disease symptoms should be done on plants for sale at your facility prior to moving them to other growers. What are we enforcing when we say harmful pests, and what does it mean to be free of pests in the plants that you're selling? There's a rule in our WACs called freedom from infestation. And so it says that any plants sold or offered for sale in the state must be inspected and found free, practically free from common plant pests. And then your plants need to be 100% free from quarantine pests, or those that would be harmful if they became established here. So there's two different things there. Practically free is a standard you can use to measure the level of common pests that are found in a crop. And practically free means less than 2% infestation level. So if you have a greenhouse with hemp plants in it, you're doing good cultural practices, you would expect your plants to have an infestation rate of less than 2% for aphids, mites, and those kinds of common greenhouse pests. Common hemp insect pests, you know way more about this than I do, but to be practically free from common pests, these are some of the pests you'd be looking at applying that 2% level to. So regulatory speaking, You don't want to have more than 2% level of infestation of any of these common pests like hemp russet mites, two-spotted spider mites, cannabis aphids, defoliators like caterpillars, beetle and moth larvae. And so this might be a rule you could use to apply to determine economic threshold for treatment or other things within your own pest management plan. And of course, there are diseases that are also common, and we would apply this same 2% rule to things like powdery mildew, botrytis, things that are found commonly on young seedlings or plants that are young and growing in a humid environment like a greenhouse. So important to think about plant diseases specifically because powdery mildew and downy mildew are going to be fairly common on hemp plants. This is an area where we need a lot more research, and I'm glad to see a WSU researcher on the webinar because we don't know if the diseases of hemp mirror diseases of other crops that could be then infected. So we want to know that the powdery mildews found on hemp are different than those found on hops or even on other cannabis plants. I don't think there's great research yet in this area. So we're looking into that. And we're hoping WSU will too. So the take-home message is have a pest management plan to keep the levels of these common pests low, below 2%. And you all know what those things are. If you have a pest management plan that incorporates all of your best management practices for sanitation, lower humidity, good air circulation, and the use of labeled fungicides or biologicals when it's absolutely required. So develop a pest management plan. Of course, when you're going to use any kind of chemical treatment on hemp, you're going to want to look at that WSDA list on our website. That is all the products allowed for hemp production in Washington State. And this is maintained by our pesticide management division. They do a great job of going through those labels for you and keeping that list current. So you'll want to reference that. So as Benita mentioned before, beyond those common pests where we have an acceptable tolerance level for them being present in plants for sale, there are also quarantine pests, and these there is a zero tolerance for. So any plants for sale cannot contain any quarantine pests within Washington State or in shipping interstate. And there are different quarantines in every state. Like I said, we're protecting the crops we have here. So we have a hop disease quarantine. We have European corn borer quarantine. We have apple maggot quarantines. Our big crops are what we're protecting here. These are the quarantines pests that I'm going to go over today. But I also want to point out that when you're shipping, you'll want to make sure, beyond all of the requirements for THC level and all of that, that your shipments identify the plants in them with the botanical name and the common name. And for hemp, we would like to see Cannabis sativa L for the botanical name and industrial hemp as the common name of the plants that are being shipped. So again, protecting crops. This is what the plant protection group is all about. And so we look at the possibility that there could be crossover between hemp crops, marijuana, and hops. These are all very closely related, of course, cannabis and humulus being in the same family of plants. And so in an attempt to protect a major hop industry here in Washington, actually Washington is the #1 producer of hops in the country with 60,000 acres. So we are monitoring research that's being done on different pests through the Oregon State University's Global Hemp Innovation Center. If you're not aware of this, it's a great place to go to get new information on emerging research and pest issues. So look up the Global Hemp Innovation Center. OSU is really doing it right there. And so one thing that we're looking at is mildew strains on both cannabis and hemp and on hops. All are subject to powdery mildew and downy mildew. Are those the same strains that affect those hosts, or are they host specific? If we find that there's going to be crossover, then we might have to do some quarantine work to protect those crops from each other, basically. And I think Bonnie Jo was pointing out that, powdery mildew strains can be moved interstate, even on the seeds that come into the state. So we need to understand better how hemp is moving, how seeds are moving, and what those risks might be to our different crops. And that is because, of course, that the more pest introductions you have, the more impact there will be on not only the vigor and yield of the crops that we grow here, but also there can be impacts to our exports. Washington is a specialty crop rich state, and we're very lucky to be able to grow over 300 different types of crops here. But to maintain that specialty crop safe environment, we have to protect all the crops here and our status as an exporter. If we become known as a state that's infested with a certain insect or disease, it's going to affect our ability to export these crops to other states and countries. So everybody's part of this plant protection important game that we're playing. So the first quarantine I want to look at for hemp is not actually something that affects hemp, but it is our hop disease quarantine. And this just shows you the importance of how far we need to go in order to protect our crops. So in Washington, you may only import hop plants if they come from Oregon or Idaho. Hop plants from any other state are out and out prohibited, cannot come here, and that is because of the prevalence of viruses and powdery mildew in other states that do not have certification for hop plants. So that's the kind of thing that could affect hemp in the future. We're hopeful that we can be proactive on all these things and keep our hemp industry in a free-flowing interstate trade. I want to highlight today a quarantine pest that we're particularly concerned about right now in Washington, and that is Japanese beetle. Japanese beetle is a beetle that is established in the eastern states and has been for about 100 years. But it's not here in Washington yet. And we are trying hard to maintain that pest-free status for Washington. So all rooted plants in soil can carry Japanese beetle larvae from an infested state. So this just highlights the importance of getting, if you're going to bring in hemp plants in soil from another state, make sure you get that inspection certificate with them that meets all of our quarantines in Washington. And hemp plants would fall under the Japanese beetle quarantine. They have to be either brought in from eastern states with a special certificate, or they have to be brought in from states that aren't infested with Japanese beetle. They can also be brought in bare root, but I don't think that's a very viable option. We have a strong Japanese beetle surveillance program because there are so many types of plants that can be affected by Japanese beetle. We're very much protecting all of our crops here from infestation. So you can see that map of the U.S. shows in purple where Japanese beetle is well established, and it has slowly moved over through the Midwest in some areas. And then out here in the West, we're actively eradicating Japanese beetle when it's found. I'll show you that too. So this just shows the distribution. Anything in green is a state that's infested with Japanese beetle. It's going to be harder to bring in hemp plants from those states because of that potential for infestation in our quarantine. Things in the middle of the country are partially infested, and then out here in the west, we are still hanging on tooth and nail to try and keep our non-infested status. In Washington right now, we have some eradication going on for Japanese beetle. You can see those brown counties there. That's King, Pierce, and Yakima. So in those counties, we have had to actively eradicate beetles when they've been found. And in Yakima County right now, we have just discovered a small infestation. We hope it's small. We don't really know yet what the size of it is, but we will be eradicating that over the next however long it takes. It's going to be a multi-year process. So just highlighting the importance. Please bring in plants that are certified free of Japanese beetle. Another quarantine pest of concern for hemp is gypsy moth, believe it or not. So gypsy moth is a very destructive moth found again in the northeastern states and in the northeastern Canadian provinces. And any hemp plants are probably not a good host for gypsy moth because they're, they're not woody, and gypsy moth likes woody plant stems to lay its eggs on. So the plants themselves may not be a concern, but anything that has a hard surface, these gypsy moths can lay their eggs on. And so you can see that middle picture is gypsy moth egg masses on the trunk of a tree. That can happen on the side of pallets or pots, plant pots. It can happen on the side of a truck. So again, any hemp plants coming into the state in pots or that could possibly carry gypsy moth will have to meet our gypsy moth quarantine. And only items free of gypsy moth can enter the state of Washington. This is another pest where we have a strong surveillance program going on, and we set many thousands of traps every year to make sure that it's not becoming established here in the state. Another quarantine that will affect the movement of hemp plants is our noxious weed seed and plant quarantine. And Benita showed you that brochure that listed over 100 different species of plants which are prohibited from being sold or distributed here in Washington state. And a lot of it is pretty obvious. We don't want tansy ragwort becoming more established here. There's just a lot of invasive species on that list. And how it affects hemp is if you are selling hemp plants, the pots of soil that those hemp plants are in must be free of contaminating weed species. You can't have any of these prohibited species in the pots of those plants. Another quarantine pest that affects hemp, believe it or not, is apple maggot. And of course, hemp is not a host for apple maggot, but we have a quarantine in our state that has a protected area in eastern Washington. You can see the green counties there in the east are all protected. That's our major apple producing area. And in those counties, apple maggot is still not present. It's a pest-free area. Of course, apple maggot is present in all of those red counties. So it's kind of, divided. The state is divided by the mountains down the middle, which keeps a lot of apple maggots out naturally from that pest-free area. But the point with hemp is that if you grow hemp outdoors in pots, and this may be a long shot, but if those pots are under the fruit tree canopies of, say, apple trees or cherry trees in the red counties, western Washington, you will need to have them inspected and have a phyto certificate to move them into the green counties. So it's a little complicated, but this does apply to any potted plants grown in the red counties going into the green counties. And then I want to talk about the European corn borer quarantine. European corn borer is obviously a pest of corn, and it can get into the stalks of other fiber crops like hemp growing in the field. European corn borer was named the most times back in the 1940s when hemp production was, prevalent in the U.S. And it was the most named insect pest that caused damage on hemp crops. So right now, our European corn borer quarantine does not include hemp, but I think that it will in the future because besides being a good host for European corn borer, other states are already jumping on the quarantine bandwagon, and California and Texas have both recently added hemp to their European corn borer quarantines. In California, you can only have a stem diameter less than 1/4 inch of cannabis if you want to ship cuttings to California registered hemp growers. So something like that may be coming for Washington State. We, of course, want to work with our industries on any quarantine development. And so most of the time when a new quarantine is looked at or a new pest is of concern, we're going to look to our hemp industry to give us guidance on what you'd like us to do to protect you. That's how we like to work it here at the Department of Ag. So just want to highlight that, again, the next webinar that you listen to, we're going to discuss a lot more about how Plant Services Program can assist hemp growers with phytosanitary inspections and certificates so that when you ship to other states or countries, the hemp plants for planting are free of the pests of concern for those destination states or countries. Remember that phytosanitary literally means plant health, and anytime we move plants, we are more than likely moving plant pests. So this is a national program of interstate commerce that requires phytosanitary inspection and documentation. Scott Brooks will go over that more, and I will say too that we're learning a lot every day as we start to work with hemp as an export commodity. So we all have a lot of questions, and USDA or WSDA also has questions, but we want to assist you as much as possible with making this a good, strong export crop. So any questions?
Thank you so much, Cindy. That was so informative. Do we have any questions on the chat for Cindy?
I know everyone's absorbing a lot of information today, and if you come up with questions later, please give a call or email. My information's there. I'm happy to talk to anyone, as well as Benita or Scott will be listed on our website as well.
Yeah, and when you email any of our kind of subject matter experts, be sure to just copy like CC hemp@apr.wa.gov, because I mean I was in a meeting with Cindy yesterday where we were like, how do we do that? Maybe we just have to talk about that. We're figuring a lot of this out. We're in process right now, so a lot of this stuff we just have to work together to find the answers. So when you have a question for one of our subject matter experts as it relates to hemp, CC that hemp, and that way we can all kind of brainstorm together. If we don't have an answer, we'll make an answer. Any questions?
I do see a comment from Scott Brooks in the chat about Colorado is a partially infested state for Japanese beetle, so shipping in soils are subject to Washington's Japanese beetle quarantine. That's a very good point, since Colorado is probably a likely state that we're going to be trading hemp with.
Well, if that is it, thank you so much. This one really was a big brain expander for me personally. So I'm definitely going to rewatch this one. As I said, we will be posting these to the WSDA YouTube channel. We'll also have a link to that on our website, but we're just not there yet. So I've gotten a lot of questions from folks. Where are the recordings? If you are on our listserv, you will get an update when the recordings are posted. So just sit tight with us. We've got a lot going on. We'll be meeting again next week for our fourth and final webinar. I believe that one is in the afternoon. So join us there. Again, if you don't have the link, email me. I will mail you the link personally. And thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our presenters. That was awesome. So thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.